The New York Islanders score a dramatic overtime win over the Boston Bruins. We'll have our key takeaways from the game, including why it shouldn't have gone to overtime in the first place. And we'll talk a little bit more about Cole Eiserman and Danny Nelson at the World Juniors. All that and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, the New York Islanders did it somehow. They pull off a 5-4 overtime win over the Boston Bruins, and Bo Horvat comes up big. The overtime was the sort of ultimate no, yes kind of a reaction, because I think out of the, well, what did we have? 3 minutes and 10 seconds of overtime. I think the Boston Bruins possessed the puck for maybe 3 minutes, and the Islanders possessed the puck for 10 seconds, but they made the 10 seconds count. Bo Horvat gets the breakaway game-winning goal just after an amazing save by Ilya Sorokin on the other side of the ice, and the Islanders managed to get the win. Now, the disappointing thing is this. It should never have gone to overtime. It shouldn't have come to that, and we saw yet another Islanders collapse make the overtime possible. And let me explain. The New York Islanders last played in 2024, okay? They last played New Year's Eve day, which is Tuesday, and they were off Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then you had this game. The Bruins, on the other hand, were playing on a back-to-back and their third game in 4 nights. The Islanders should have been the better prepared, better rested team. So you get into the third period, Anders Lee scores his second goal of the game, and the Islanders are up 4-2 with 16 minutes and 19 seconds left to play. That should have been the game. The game should have been clinched right then and there. And yet the Islanders, in typical Islanders fashion, less than a minute after the Anders Lee goal, David Pastrnak scores, and it's 4-3. And then with 7 minutes and change left, Pasta scores again for the Bruins. You have your typical breakdowns on one play, Alexander Romanov beaten to the spot. On the other play, J.G. Pageau tries a foolish cross-ice, low-percentage play in his own zone that leads directly to a turnover. And voila, the 2-goal third-period lead is gone. And yeah, the Islanders still got the 2 points, and we are definitely pleased to see the 2 points, get collected. Let there be no doubt the Islanders need the 2 points. But you can't give up the points to the Bruins. And if you look at the standings, look, you still, if you're the New York Islanders, you still need to approach the rest of the season. If you're the players, if you're the coaching staff, you need to be trying to pick up points, okay? That's what you need to do. So if you're having any hope of still being in the playoffs, the Bruins have 45 points right now. The Islanders have 37. The Islanders are only 3 points out of a playoff spot right now. Now, granted, Ottawa, who holds the second wild card, has 2 games in hand. Tampa Bay, who holds the first wild card and is 5 points ahead of the Islanders, have 4 games in hand. So it's close, but not that close. But giving a point away to the Bruins, who are probably going to be one of those teams that are fighting for either third place in the Atlantic or one of those 2 wild card spots, is costly. You need to get those 2 points in regulation if you're the New York Islanders. So yes, you get 2 points, but you're giving one of the teams you're fighting for those final playoff spots a point as well. And while it is great that the Islanders were able to overcome their mistakes and win the game, they've got to be better in the third period at protecting leads. Look, you can talk to me about the fact that this team played a pretty good hockey game in a lot of ways. But the flaws of this roster, the inability to clear the zone, the defensive lapses, we didn't have any problem with the PK, so because there was only 1 penalty kill, and the Islanders actually scored a shorty instead of giving up a power play goal. So a good thing about this game from an Islanders perspective is it was 5-on-5 almost the whole game. You were only shorthanded once, you score a shorty, and you don't give up a power play goal. You go 0 for 0 on the power play. You score a shorty and go 1 for 1 on the PK. That's about as good as the Islanders special teams has been in any given game all year. It's like the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm, right? Special teams actually contributed to the win a little bit, and because they were not a major part of this game, they couldn't do any harm. So that was a plus, but the same old problems that have haunted this team all year, or many of them, cropped up again, and it ended up being costly because Boston got a valuable point, even though you got to be happy with the fact that the Islanders managed to get 2. Now, injury updates before we delve deeper into this game. Isaiah George, Simon Holmstrom, both of them did not play. They are both still listed officially as day-to-day. So Dennis Cholowski in there instead of Isaiah George, and Pierre Engvall in there instead of Simon Holmstrom. And guess what? Pierre Engvall -2, Dennis Cholowski -1 in the game. And, again, not saying it was all terrible playing by these 2 particular players, because they did okay in some respects. But again, a typical Pierre Engvall game. He plays almost 11 minutes, no goals, -2. No shots on goal in the game. No hits in the game, no blocked shots, 1 giveaway. I mean, not great. Now, the fourth line, as it was put together, definitely did have a positive impact at times, especially in the early going of this game. They had some solid shifts. Now, Hudson Fasching, by the way, leaving the game a little bit early. He was shaken up. We'll hope for an update on Fasching at some point later today. But, overall, Matt Martin was the healthy scratch. Holmstrom and George, the injury scratches. But the Islanders able to get something going, and you got to be happy when you score 5 goals in a game. If you're the New York Islanders, it doesn't happen all that often. And, again, Patrick Waugh, he likes to mix and match the lines. He's trying to get players going. So it was Nelson, Lee, and Barzal on the top line, Horvat, Duclair, and Palmieri on the second, Pajot, Siplikov, and Cizikas on the third line, and then McLean, Engvall, and Fasching on the fourth line. Again, that worked okay. You got the 5 goals, so you can't complain much about the way that the lines were shuffled. And again, it worked to the Islanders' advantage offensively, at least. But it was just frustrating to watch that lead slip away for the umpteenth time that this team just couldn't hold a third period lead. It's got to change. That has now become part of the Islanders' identity, and most of the features of the team's identity are negative. Now, the good news is you got the 2 points. You ended a 3-game losing streak, and the Islanders are kind of, all 3 of those losses were 1-goal games, except the New Year's Eve day loss, which was a 2-goal loss that included an empty netter. So, it's not like they're playing awful hockey. But now you have a 2-game Western road trip, not West Coast, but they're off until Thursday, and then you play at Vegas Thursday, at Utah for the first time ever Saturday. And then you go up against a couple of teams back home that are in the fight with you for those 2 playoff spots. So we'll see how this all plays out. But overall, despite the discouraging third period, the Islanders come away with the 2 points and get a W. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We'll have a few more takeaways from this win in Boston, plus our hero and go to the game. We'll talk a little bit about Cole Eiserman and Danny Nelson and what they've been able to do at World Juniors, and for our Islanders' birthday of the day. A player who was with the Islanders for their first 2 seasons in the NHL, who passed away far too young, died at the age of 32 way back in 1978. But let's see if you can guess who this Sudbury, Ontario native is. We've got that and a whole lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. From big upsets to winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And Islander fans, use your knowledge of the game of hockey and the Islanders for some exciting opportunities on FanDuel. Head to the app, check out the odds for Thursday's game in Vegas. Should be some exciting opportunities there. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So let's talk a little bit more about this game. And, there were some really good things to like about this game. And one of the things I got to do, I got to give props to Anders Lee, okay? Anders Lee, he worked over the offseason with, he worked with Adam Oates, and it really seems to have helped. I give him so much credit for the way he's handled himself this year. And, Anders Lee already, right now, has 18 goals on the season, and Thursday is the halfway mark. He is on pace for a 36-goal season after barely reaching 20 goals a year ago. And whether it's because he's healthy or he rededicated himself, there is no question that Anders Lee worked his rear end off to get back into the swing of things and become a more productive player this year, and it has paid off in spades. You look at the numbers here for Anders Lee. 2 goals, 7 shots on goal, 2 hits in 17 minutes of ice time. Right now, he is leading the team in goals scored. He has been a difference maker, and I tip my hat to Anders Lee for everything he's been able to accomplish so far this season. Ryan Polak, a goal, 2 assists, a +2. He had 2 shots on goal, 3 blocked shots, and 3 takeaways in this game. And you got to give him a lot of credit for the way he's played. At first, that goal, by the way, was credited to Anders Lee. They changed it back to Ryan Polak, and I think that was the correct call on that, but very good. How about Alexander Romanov? Now, we touched on the fact that he was beaten on one of those goals by Pasternak where, he was just beaten to the spot, didn't pick up his man the way he should have, but 6 blocked shots in this game for Alexander Romanov. He also had an assist. You got to give him some credit for playing that way. 6 blocked shots is basically sacrificing your body for the team, and I definitely give him a lot of credit in that department. Hero of the game, it's got to be Bo Horvat. 2 goals. He won 13 out of 19 faceoffs. He had the game winner in overtime. He scored a shorty. I just have to give Bo Horvat that award, even though there were some other quality candidates out there. So to me, hero of the game, got to go with Bo Horvat. Go to the game is a tough one, but to me, it's that third period collapse. It just happens far too often with this team. And I'll tell you right now, until the New York Islanders figure out how to hold the lead, it is going to be a long, long season because there will be too many times. There have already been too many times when this team has just left points on the table. And if you remember, last year, the Islanders, what did they? They finished 3rd place in the division by what? 1 point? You can't leave 3, 4, 6, 7 points on the table or even give points to the opposition like they did tonight with Boston and think that you're going to leapfrog 5 or 6 teams with a strong finish. You're not going to be able to do that because for every time you do win in overtime after giving up a 2-goal lead, there'll be times when they lose in regulation, lose in overtime, lose in a shootout. It is not the MO you need for this team if you're going to make a playoff run. And again, change is needed on this roster. I have said that. As much as I really love the way Anders Lee is playing right now, if a good offer comes along for him at the trade deadline, I would move him because his value will probably never be higher than this. And you get a better return, get $7 million or part of that in cap relief. Look, I am a big Anders Lee fan on and off the ice. I think he's been a great captain at times. He has been great in the community. The Cancer Jam is a wonderful event every year, but for the long-term interests of this team and this franchise, if somebody makes me a really good offer at the trade deadline and the Islanders are, roughly where they are now in the standings, I'll take it. I would move on from Anders Lee. So, I mean, you can't expect that this is a repeatable formula to make the playoffs. The team needs to play smarter and more consistently. And here we are 40 games into the season, still saying the same things and talking about a lot of the same issues that we were talking about last season, 4 games into this season, 14 games into this season, and now 40 games into this season. Special teams, lack of ability to finish, losing leads late, overworking your goalie, just the same failure to clear the zone. It's the same things over and over again. And this team needs to be overhauled or retooled. You don't need to strip everything down. There is a core you can build around here of, let's say, 6, 7 players who you can, you're going to keep your Bo Horvats and your Matthew Barzals and your Ilya Sorokins and, certainly, hopefully at some point, you get your Cole Eisermans and your Danny Nelsons 2 to 3 years down the road when they're ready. But there are, players you can build around, but at the same time, there's a lot of players you can move to get this team to be younger, faster, and more skilled, which is what we all know they need to do. And the time to do it is at the trade deadline and this coming off season, because there are unique opportunities available. The way the contracts are structured, the way some of the no trade clauses will move from full no trade clauses to partial no trade clauses, there's a lot of opportunities this year at the trade deadline, this coming off season, and the Islanders need to take full advantage before they just sink deeper and deeper into the muddy middle. All right, more to get to on today's show. Cole Eiserman, Danny Nelson, World Juniors, both players making their marks, and we'll talk about what they're doing as Team USA is fighting for the gold medal and back-to-back championships. We'll have that. We'll have our Islanders birthday of the day and a lot more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, that definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings together everything in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. So, cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I wanted to talk a little bit about World Juniors, and, Team USA is competing for the gold as I record this episode. But here's the thing, and we've talked about this, that both Danny Nelson and Cole Eiserman have been very productive for Team USA over the course of this tournament. And Nelson, quite honestly, has been even more productive than Eiserman. And the thing about Eiserman, and I think this is sort of a double-edged sword where the good definitely outweighs the bad, but Eiserman is the 13th forward for Team USA. Now, in the NHL, a 13th forward usually is sitting in the press box, but not in the World Juniors. But at the same time, he's more or less a power play specialist who will get the occasional shift 5-on-5. So he's not playing a lot of minutes, but he is still enthusiastic, working hard, and getting goals and points and being productive at the World Juniors. Now, keep in mind that the reason that he's not in the top 12 forwards and getting a regular shift is because the coach, David Carl, is concerned about his lack of defense and the things he doesn't do when he's not shooting the puck. So, you know, it's part of the problem, or it illustrates part of the problem. And yet, the fact that he is still making a difference offensively and still is enthusiastic and involved and a good teammate, I think that shows that he cares, that he's willing to work, and that, you know, Eiserman is coachable. And here's what the coach, David Carl, had to say. He said this after the semifinal win earlier over the weekend. He said, you look at what we're asking him to do, and then he still finds a way to impact the game on the score sheet. He has owned it, and he has accepted that that's the best for the team. And I think his teammates recognize it. It's not easy for him either. I recognize it. We talked about it, and it's his job to be a pro and handle it. And he really has done it in a positive way. It's not easy to get a couple of 5-on-5 shifts a period and then go out and impact the power play. But we don't win these games without him. I can't say enough good things about the way he's handled it and his maturity. And for him, I think sometimes he gets a little misunderstood, and he has through the past 18 months, but he cares deeply about winning. He cares a lot about the guys, and you see that behind closed doors. He's very passionate about the team's success, and it's exciting that he's handling it well and still impacting the game in the ways that he can. That is a really beautiful statement by the coach. And like I said, the whole situation both illustrates the shortcomings that we see from Cole Eiserman's game and some very positive things about Cole Eiserman's game. So take it with a grain of salt. We will fill everybody in on the overall tournament and how both Danny Nelson and Cole Eiserman did in it on tomorrow's show. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And today would have been, the 79th birthday of former Islanders winger Bob Cook, the 6-foot, 190-pound native of Sudbury, Ontario, not drafted, made his NHL debut with the Vancouver Canucks in 1970-71, played 2 games for them, 13 games for the Red Wings early in the 72-73 season, and then joined the Islanders, where he played 33 games that first year, 8 goals, 14 points, and 14 penalty minutes. Played another 22 games with the Isles in 73-74, 2 goals, 3 points, 4 penalty minutes, and then he played his last 2 games in the NHL with the Minnesota North Stars in 1974-75. Only played 72 career NHL games, 13 goals, 22 points, 22 penalty minutes, never played in a playoff game. But his best game as an Islander, March 3rd, 1973, Islanders hosting Vancouver at the Nassau Coliseum. And our Islanders' birthday of the day, Bob Cook, opens up the scoring at the 4:08 mark to make it 1-0 Islanders. Then, late in the period, with the score 2-1 Islanders, Cook strikes again. Brian Lefley and Dave Hudson with the assists. And it's 3-1 Islanders in the second period. After Craig Cameron made it 4-1 Islanders, Bob Cook completes the hat trick. Dave Hudson, the only assist on that one. And basically, that closed out the scoring. But for Bob Cook, our Islanders' birthday of the day, he gets his only career NHL hat trick. He's a +2. He scored 3 goals on 4 shots. And he ends up with a memorable day. Billy Smith, the Islanders goalie, 26 saves in the win. Ed Dyke was the goalie for Vancouver, who gave up the 3 goals to the one and only Bob Cook. Cook unfortunately passed away at the age of 32 way back in 1978. But again, today would have been his birthday. He was an important member of that first Islanders team, and he is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. We will be back tomorrow. We'll wrap up the World Juniors and talk about that. Hopefully, we'll also have some injury updates on Simon Holmstrom, on Hudson Fasching, on Isaiah George, maybe even on Semyon Varlamov. Make sure you join us for that. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.